We are live. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. We are Movie versus Film, a movie review and film history channel where we explore the many different ways in which directors tell stories on film. We have a very special guest today, Ray Abruzzo, who is an actor who was in, of course, The Sopranos as Little Carmine. He was in Dynasty, Mad Men, Transparent, LA Law. I mean, the list goes on and on. Ray, thanks so much again for doing this. I really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Roberto. My pleasure. I went with the Italian version. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's totally fine. My grandparents will be happy with that.
That's for them.
Were you from are you from a big, I know you're born in Queens. Are you from a big Italian family, quite large?
No. Well, my father was one of 10 kids. So I have a huge extended family of cousins. But my immediate family were just, there were three of us. I'm the baby, of which most people can tell right away upon meeting me that I'm the baby. But yeah, I'm the youngest. I'm the youngest of three. I have an older brother and an older sister. But it was pretty much an Italian household, but not like a big, kid, not 10 kids like the old timers.
Right. Were your parents born in New York as well, or were they born in Italy?
No, both of my parents were born in New York. However, all my four grandparents were born in Italy. My grandfather died in Sicily, and some of their elder siblings were born in Italy. So they were both the youngest. Yeah.
What did your parents do for a living? Are you from an arts family at all, or were they, what did they do?
No. Both my parents worked. I came, I was a latchkey kid. Both my parents worked my whole life. My mother was always a secretary. She had been a secretary in various different positions, and a lot of times she worked for a judge. She was a secretary for a judge. And then my father was a salesman, and then he worked two jobs. So he was a salesman, and he worked at Yonkers Racetrack in New York at night, 6 months a year. So we were in an apartment building, and they worked three jobs between the two of them. So,
wow.
Yeah, no art. My father always had artistic sensibilities. He had a flair for it. I think maybe deep inside it was something he wished he had pursued. He dabbled in painting as well, which he did later in life after he retired. That's a great story if you want to get into that. And I think he saw himself as a performer, but he never pursued it in any way seriously.
What kind of painting did he do?
Well, he always wanted to study art and take art. And when he finally retired, he had never finished high school. So he took his high school equivalency test at 65. And then he went on to take some college courses. And then he actually went to Florence to study art in Florence when he was about 67 years old.
That's amazing.
And he was doing it with college age kids. He went there. It's just this funny story. I just have to, he's long gone, but I remember I was speaking to him on the phone from Florence once, and so I said, "So how's it going over there, Dad? How you doing?" He goes, "Well, the teacher complimented my work, and she didn't say anything to any of the other kids." And he was so involved in it, he had no clue that he was, the other kids, that he was considering himself just, a kid in school. It's one of my favorite memories of my father. Yeah.
Was he self-conscious that he was with people like much younger than him, or did he not care?
I don't think he noticed. I think I think he was completely unaware of that fact. Yeah.
Oh, good. Good for him.
I guess maybe there's something in the genes of us Abruzzos being in denial about our age.
Looks like it.
I'm about the same age he was then, and I'm in total denial too. I feel like I should still be just out of college figuring out what I'm going to do with my life. So that never changes.
Well, like I said, I mean, to me, you don't look any different than when I saw you on Sopranos 20 years ago for the first time. So that says something.
I can't believe it's been 20 years, but I have 18 filters on my computer and all sorts. If little bear ears pop up or something, but no, I guess I have good genes.
So there you go. Were you, because I knew you grew up, a Catholic school, a lot of Italian community. Was there there was Irish community as well. Were there other cultural backgrounds you grew up
Yeah,
around?
where I grew up in my where I grew up actually was the apartment building I lived in was Italian and Jewish.
Okay.
But then if I went to the Catholic school, you were Italian or Irish. That was it. You never heard of anything else. It was just you were just Italian or Irish, and there was always those kind of Irish-Italian rivalries that went on.
Yeah.
And then arguing with the Jewish kids about certain holidays that we got off and they didn't get off, or they didn't have school on certain days when we did. Other than that, everything was pretty copacetic. But that was the extent of any kind. Yeah, yeah. I probably went to more bar mitzvahs. Go ahead.
Yeah, there you go. I know that when you were 14, that's when you got the acting. You did Inherit the Wind in high school, and from there, so you started the Middle Village Summer Theater Workshop. Yes. How was that funded for when you were so young? How did you guys get that going?
Well, when I did Inherit the Wind, the guy that played Henry Drummond, Patrick Sharada, he became a very good friend of mine. And he and a couple of the other guys, John Canzaro, they decided that we should do this summer theater because we were all so involved. And he was just graduating, or maybe it was his senior year in high school and I was a freshman. So he just got one of the local church to give us their auditorium for the summer. And that's the way it started. And then they managed to raise money from the Queen's Endowment on the Arts, and even got some money from the National Endowment on the Arts. And we did everything ourselves. There was no adult supervision. It was just us teenage kids, and we built the sets and directed the plays and cast the plays and did every aspect of production ourselves. And it was a great learning experience, and kept you off the streets. And I'm still in, the weird thing is, I don't know how many years later, a lot, but I'm still in touch with all those people. There was such a unique bond you form at that age when you have something, when you're so entwined and you have a common goal, that you're so passionate about. Even though I'm one of the only ones that went on to pursue this professionally, we've all stayed very close because of that common bond that we had then. So
do you what plays do you remember doing back then?
I remember one of my favorite ones, and I'd actually like to do it again now. Is called 1,000 Clowns. I don't know if you know.
Oh,
that, right?
That's
Kaufman and Hart, isn't it? Is it?
Oh God, there was the movie, I believe, right? Jason Robards.
Jason Robards.
Yeah,
yes.
That's right. I saw that.
It's a great film, and it's a great part. And I played the little kid. I played Nick. The kid
the boy he's living with,
right, his nephew that he lives with, and it was so much fun. The actor Bobby Marine, actually I'm still in touch with him on Facebook as well. After all these years, it was just that was one that really affected me. I enjoyed that. Now I'd love to play the uncle part, because it's really a wonderful play.
Yeah, it is. I remember. I don't know how different the movie is compared to the play, but
it's pretty similar.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. It's I don't think there's much difference at all. Jason Robards, one of my favorite actors. He's terrific in that. Was he ever not great?
He was always fantastic.
Yeah.
I'll have to check out that play. I know that you did the summer program at the neighborhood playhouse. Did you work with Meisner himself, or was it Bill Esper?
It was Bill Esper and Bill Alderson at the time. And but Sandy was still around, and he came in and he did some lecturing at that time. Yeah.
How was that?
That was a couple of years later. I think I was in college when I did that. That was that was after high school. That was a great experience. I mean, the neighborhood playhouse and that whole Meisner technique. If young actors ask me how to study, who to study with, if you could find someone that really is fluent in the Meisner technique, it's a great foundation. You could go wherever you want from there. But I find when I'm working with certain actors and you just get chatting and you say, oh, who'd you study with? Oh, I studied with Freddie Karaman. Oh, I studied with Bill Esper or Bill Alderson. Oh, okay. And it's like you have a language, Yeah. And there's a way of working, and you could there's an aliveness to the people you're working with. Gandolfini was trained the same way too.
That's right.
And I didn't find that out until after he passed away. And I remember reflecting back on some of the scenes that we did together, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, this makes total sense that he was trained that way because he was so responsive and so
Response,
alive.
yeah.
And yeah, it's all about breaking down that time between the stimulus and the response. And yeah, so it was a great foundation to the Meisner method.
Yeah, no, I love it myself. I find a lot of people don't always have the patience for it, especially nowadays, but it pays off, let me tell you.
Oh, it does. It's I was a drummer early on, and just now I've been kind of speaking to this other drummer friend of mine online, and he sent me some sticks and a pad, and it's like he's trying to get me back to the rudiments, and it's like, well, that's the same thing this is, it's developing those tools. You develop those tools and those skills, and it's kind of like a muscle memory, and then it just stays with you, and it's not that I do the repetition. I don't do the Meisner exercises now, but it's part of who I am and how I work. Yeah.
Because you did it for the summer, but did you then study with someone else to get the full system? Oh, you did.
Yeah.
Okay,
then I went back after I got I had convinced my parents that I was going to go to law school. So I kind of stayed at St. John's University, and there was no real theater program there. So I just took communications classes, but we took over the theater. There was another situation where there was no faculty supervision, just my friend Russ Banham and I, and we kind of built the theater there, and we did many plays during the year. And then I was doing the Middle Village Summer Theater Workshop in the summers, and then I was going to the Neighborhood Playhouse as well at the same time. So I was just absorbing almost 24 hours a day, was doing the acting. Then when I got out of college, I moved into the East Village, as one does in New York, to try to be a starving. I was doing the starving actor thing. I was well suited for that. And then so then I called up Bill Esper, I think it was, or Bill Alderson, and he said, he doesn't have a class right now, but there's a teacher, Freddie Karaman, who's also from the Neighborhood Playhouse, who's just starting a class. I'll recommend you. So I studied with Freddie Karaman, who was a terrific teacher, and then he also shared a studio with Wynn Handman, who recently just passed out, a brilliant acting teacher. So I studied with Freddie for quite some time, and then moved on to Wynn, and they all came. Wynn had been a protege of Sandy's, so it all came from the same school.
How long did you were you with those teachers? Was it a couple of years, or how long?
Couple of 3 years, I think. Yeah.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
How did you mentioned you convinced your parents that you were in law school. How did they feel about you? I think I know where this is going. About you going into acting.
They think I'm a lawyer. No. Well,
when you were on LA Law just convinced them.
I can't tell you how important it was for me to get on LA Law and play a lawyer for my mother. I mean, that just like she could finally say, "Oh, okay, now I get it." They were very supportive. Like I said, I think my father had that secret desire always to be an artist of some sort, be it a painter, or an actor, or a performer of some sort. He always also liked to sing. So I think they were just worried. They wanted me to, they always want you to have something to fall back on, and they worry about that you're going to be successful enough to feed yourself. So that is, that's always the challenge, and it doesn't really end in this business. You're always there's always that hurdle. You're always striving for more, but I think that's what kind of keeps you young. Maybe, you never really. If you never get a chance to really settle, if you never really get a chance to settle and get comfortable, and you keep striving, I think maybe that keeps a kind of youthful exuberance. And, I could definitely see that for sure. I know that you worked in a liquor store in New York. What other kind of side jobs did you do over the years? Well, the liquor store I did that for 8 years. That was an amazing experience because it was in a rough neighborhood. I mean, it was that borderline neighborhood, so you never knew what was. I was held up several times.
Oh shit!
Guns held to my head, locked in the bathroom. It was terrible. And then that corner, there were a lot of prostitutes, a lot of drugs in that area. This is right on 15th Street and 3rd Avenue. This is in the 70s. I describe it best because I actually watched them film Taxi Driver diagonally across the street from the liquor store at the Variety Arts Theater, where he pulls up in the cab and he sees Jodie Foster for the first time. And I watched them shoot that scene, and I thought, someday I want to do that. So I got my cab license. No, I'm kidding. So, but that was the neighborhood at the time where I was working at the Licks. They didn't have to dress that neighborhood or dress the streets. You know, Harvey Keitel's he's on 13th Street where he's standing there with his arms folded, you know, and he sees
that little stoop there. Yeah.
Yeah. And it says rooms. That's there. And it was there then. And they didn't have to, when the camera went down the street, that's exactly what that street looked like. And that was my walk home. I used to walk home to the liquor store down 13th Street to 2nd Avenue, down to my apartment on 6th Street. So, so all that, the reason I'm mentioning that is all that informs your acting, those kind of jobs and those kind of life experiences. So, so other jobs that I did, let's see. I worked for New York City Opera. I did props for New York City Opera. And then and then that led to me actually being in I went on a national tour with New York City Opera in Barber of Seville. I was actually in it.
Oh, as the gorilla?
No, that was a different one. Oh, you really know my resume. No, I played a deaf mute in an opera. So
all right.
That was convenient because I didn't have to sing. So, and then I played a female gorilla in a children's opera that we did touring the schools around New York City, which was another just great wild experience. That was just actually that's how I got my union card. Was playing,
the equity one, yeah.
Playing a female Pauline. Well, actually, it got me into another union musical artist, and then you could get into equity from there at the time. If I remember. Okay. But we're going way back. But yeah, that's how I got my first union card, was playing a female gorilla in a children's opera. But I think that's pretty much everybody's story about how.
Yeah, I know. I love that. What play did you do with? I'm curious because I love Michael V. Gazzo's A Hatful of Rain, and you know he was in Godfather 2 and Fingers. What play did you do with him and David Prouvel? Fingers,
that's good. He wrote Michael Gazzo. He wrote Hatful of Rain, and apparently that play came out of a lot of improv. I think it was Ben Gazzara and Tony Franciosa, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's
right.
Actor.
Yeah,
and they improvised.
Shelley Winters. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So they improvised a lot, and then Gazzo wrote the play. Then his next play was a play called the October Night of Tommy Zero, and we workshopped. I just moved to LA, and I had done a play. I think I had done another play before that, and the director was now directing this play at the Ensemble Studio Theater, and asked me to be in. I played a small part, and I went in, and it's about 18 actors, if I remember correctly. And Prouvel had the lead, and it was we never actually got a full production of it. We worked on it like as a workshop. We workshopped it for quite a while, and just watching Prouvel work was I remember he was just so alive and so there, and his emotions were so easily tapped. And I mean, and everything you see him do, the guy is just. I think he's very good. He's very good, and he's a little guy, but he has an ability, and he's the sweetest, nicest guy, and he has this ability to scare the hell out of you.
Oh yeah. Well, in Sopranos, he's terrifying.
Terrifying. I mean, he couldn't be less like that. You know what I mean? And I was just so impressed with his ability to tap into those things that was so not him. And I remember I had saw a movie that he was in before this called Nunzio. Did you ever see this movie?
I've heard of that.
Well, he was in Mean Streets, but he did this movie.
Yeah.
He did this independent movie called Nunzio, where he played a mentally challenged kid. I think it was in Brooklyn. And I remember seeing that, and I was just so blown away by his performance. So basically, when we did October Night of Tommy Zero, I was just staring at Prouvel, thinking he's the real. You watch him work, and you say, okay, that's the real deal. That's what you're striving. Yeah,
that must have been incredible. And what about Gazzo? What was he like?
He wasn't around. Gazzo wasn't around, even though he had written it. I guess he was in New York. Maybe he was a little older at the time. The director was in communication with him because it seems like they were doing a lot of rewrites and cuts as we were working on it. But he wasn't on the set. But there were other actors I worked with afterwards. John Apreo was in that. He played young Tessio in Godfather Part 2. Extremely handsome man. And I used to tease him at that point because, later on it becomes Abe Fagoda. So he's playing Abe Fagoda when he's young. And I used to tell him that, this is Francis's vision of how you're going to age. You're a very handsome young man, but you can end up looking like Abe Vigoda. And then Carmine Argenziano was another actor that was in that. And I was just working on a play with him, on a project with him last year, and he unfortunately passed away suddenly. But just great. Al Ruscio was in it, another just great actor. If you check him out, it was just a group, just an amazing group of people working at this on that play.
And this wasn't in New York. This was in
this
LA.
was in LA. Yeah, the Ensemble Studio Theater was where I think that's where we did it. Yeah.
Why did you decide to go to LA instead of staying in New York?
Yeah, that's a question I ask myself even now. I came out here just for a short term, just for a few months, and I think the lifestyle kind of won me over. I was living in the East Village at the time, and I'd done those struggling years, and I think the sunshine and the beach, and it's like, well, you could act out here too, and I did a couple of plays. I did a play pretty quickly called Vesper's Eve. I got involved with this group with a playwright named Louis LaRusso, who's also since passed, but he wrote Marlon Brando Sat Right Here, which is a beautiful play, Lamppost Reunion, which was on Broadway. So I got involved with him doing a lot of his original works out here, and again worked with some of those same actors. John Aprea, I did several plays with him at that period of time too. So I kind of just got caught up in the lifestyle, and I could still work with some good people out here. I had immediately was on stage with David Proval, so how it felt okay, and then I just stuck it out here. And of course, I look back now thinking, how would my career be different if I stayed in New York, where I've done a lot of Broadway, and then maybe I would have played Tony Soprano. Who knows if I had already been in New York? I don't know. You never know. You make any decision you make, and as I look back, as you get older, you could always peg a certain moment, where maybe a phone call or a decision you made or a chance meeting, that you can see that, wow, everything that's happened to me after that would be different if I didn't make that one phone call, if I didn't bump into that one perfect person on the street. So that always, as you get older, you can't really see that until you get far enough away from it. And that's kind of where I'm at now that you're mentioning I'm as old as your grandparents, where you look back and you see where you've come. And
only as old as my mother. That's it.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll take that. Maybe you could play my son someday.
There you go. Let's hope. Let's hope.
You're almost good looking enough.
Yeah. I don't quite make the cut.
No, but, well, good looks skip a generation, so maybe.
Damn. So close.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious, that play you just mentioned, Marlon Brando was sitting here. What is that? That sounds.
Yeah, I was never in that. I used to, when I first saw it, it was in New York. That's why I first became aware of this playwright, Louis LaRusso, and then I moved out here and ended up getting cast in some of his plays. But years earlier, when I was living in East Village in New York, there was a girl I was dating and she was working as a waitress at this theater that was putting on this play. Marlon Brando Sat Right Here is the name of it. And it's just a great concept. Takes place in Hoboken, in a little dive bar restaurant where Marlon Brando would come when shooting on the waterfront.
Oh.
So, and all the people in that neighborhood in the bar were used as extras in the movie on the waterfront. So this is a play about that bar.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I wonder if I can find that.
I think it's published. Marlon Brando Sat Right Here. I'm 90% sure it's published. He wrote some really interesting plays, and I worked with him a lot on a lot of his new plays that he was developing out here. We did one called Stoop Life, another one called Beauty. We did Vesper's Eve. Yeah, I did about 4 or 5 of his plays out here.
Was there how is the LA theater scene compared to? I mean, I'm sure it's changed, but how was it in the 80s? Was there a not much of it, or was there?
No, it was purely very small theaters. There are the big theaters, which would just be big productions, but it was hard to. It was a lot of vanity. You find a lot of vanity productions out here where somebody, gets up the money and puts on a play and stars in it themselves and directs it themselves. And I've been in a few of those that end up being a nightmare because they're miscast because the person cast themselves. So So there's a lot of that. It seems that was the big thing I noticed in the 80s. It seemed you'd find people doing plays not for the reason to do the play, but to maybe get an agent or get a series.
Stepping stone kind of thing.
Yeah, it's kind of just to be seen as opposed to the work itself.
That never works. Yeah.
So that's what I found early on. But I was fortunate to get in with some people that did some good serious work as well.
Okay. Yeah, I was always curious about that. Because you hear, I hear it's sort of improved. Like, isn't it somewhat more of a thing in LA now? Or
I've been involved in some pretty good productions out here of new play. I like doing new plays, if I can. But lately, the last 10 years or so, I find myself, I'll go out of town to do a play to like a regional theater that's doing a play that was on Broadway, and then they close, and then I'll do the world premiere, the first production, the West Coast premiere after it closed in New York, or whatever first production they do after a play closes in New York. And I found I enjoy doing that because it still feels like kind of a new play. Chances are I didn't see the New York version. And like I did one in Seattle called The Mystery of Love and Sex. It was on Broadway with Tony Shalhoub and Diane Lane at Lincoln Center. I think they did it. And then I did it up in Seattle. And, I just flew up to Seattle. They put me up, and there was some local actors there that were just phenomenal. It was like these people could be working anywhere they want, but they're just so devoted to theater.
Yeah.
But they just go from play to play to play. They'll do Romeo and Juliet, then they'll do some avant-garde piece, and then they'll do some modern piece that's just been on Broadway, and they just bounce around, and they're all so skilled and talented. And you have to step up your game. You got to bring your A game to work with these guys. And that was a wonderful experience. And I've done that a few times, and I do enjoy. I like going to a city, settling in, and then just concentrating on the play and learning the city and doing the play and then leaving. I'd like doing that once every couple of years, every year or so.
No, that's great, because so often people, as people let go of theater once they're working a lot in film and TV. So to see people need that, have that craving to go back. You look at Pacino. I mean, he's never stopped.
Never stopped. One of my good friends is Dan Lauria, and he was the father on the Wonder Years. I don't know if you know him, but we've done a lot of theater together. We were part of a play reading series where we read a new play every Monday night for an audience for 10 years. Only new plays with amazing actors. I mean, I read with, you'd read with Jack Klugman, Charles Durning, Joe Mantegna, Richard Dreyfuss, everybody read.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
So, and every Monday night we would just read it once and then do it for an audience. And it was to present new plays to the LA audiences and to producers and things. So it really kept you kind of alive. But Dan and I have done other plays together. He does a lot of theater, and he has an expression that I use. He says, "We do TV to feed our theater habit."
Right.
That's kind of the way he approaches it. But some TV's like that. But I've been fortunate enough to be on some TV that's also as fulfilling as theater.
Yeah.
I mean, there's TV now that has writing that's as good as theater or film for sure.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Was LA Law your first break in TV?
I had done a couple of other guest star parts, but I would say LA Law. LA Law opened up a lot for me, because that was. LA Law, that was Stephen Bochco, who was a great producer at the time. He had done NYPD Blue and LA Law, and then went on to do so many other great shows. But David Kelly was one of the writers on that. And then I ended up being on The Practice for 6 years because of that. And right after LA Law, that's when the producers of Dynasty saw me. So I went from LA Law right into Dynasty, and then Dynasty ended and I did Night Court. So it was like, yes, LA Law, because you could do a million of these TV shows, but if you do a TV show that the people in the industry watch, it changes everything. You could be you could do 10 or 15 guest stars on something and nobody ever sees it.
I never thought of that. That's a good good point. Yeah.
Huge difference. And LA Law at that time, it was winning. It won the Emmys all those first 3 years, and it was kind of a groundbreaking show. So it was the show that people in the business watched. So I had a nice little 5-episode arc, and from that, people saw me, and then I got Dynasty directly from that, and then things have progressed, and then I ended up, I did a lot of other Bochco projects, Doogie Howser, NYPD Blue, and then David Kelly then used me on The Practice because he was a writer on LA Law, and then Boston Legal. So, it all kind of feeds off. It feeds off. But the key is to be in a show that people in the business watch. Transparent was the same way. Transparent was a show that directors, even film directors, would watch. Yeah, because it was so unique. So
I've been meaning to watch that because it looks really good, and I've heard great things.
It was such an amazing. I've been so lucky. We're mentioning these shows, and each one of them been for each decade it were groundbreaking in that period of time. From LA Law to even Dynasty in a certain way left its mark, and Transparent was a very unique experience. Completely different from anything I ever worked on. A lot of freedom, a lot of improv, they just let the camera roll and see what happens, and they catch it somehow. And it was shot beautifully. It felt like you're making a really gritty, independent film. And your point of view is.
I like the sound of that. That's fun.
Oh, yeah. And yet I love the Sopranos where you couldn't change a word. There's that, and so it's just being able to adapt to whatever situation you're in, and those couldn't have been more different, but both very, very, very fulfilling. And I loved my character on Transparent was very unique, and I loved playing that particular character. You'll have to watch it. I don't have a big part. I have a small little arc, but it was kind of groundbreaking at the time and challenging and rewarding. It was one of the few parts I walked away feeling, well, I'm actually a little better person. I learned about myself playing this part. So, yeah.
What when you say you learned about yourself, was it just a certain side of yourself you hadn't tapped into before for a role?
No, it wasn't necessarily that I learned about myself. It opened me up quite a bit. The show is about a man at 70 years old that's transitioning to be a woman. That's the foundation of the show. And so the cast and the writers and the crew are people all along the spectrum of gender identification, everything. And you walk onto the set and it was such a warm, welcoming, creative atmosphere. You just got sucked into it, and it just felt great. And I remember driving home after the first day. I thought, I feel like a little better person right now. I don't know why. I felt like my heart opened up a little. It's like I've always been an open guy. I've been in theater for 40-something years. You know, but there was something about the atmosphere there that was so supportive of everyone, no matter who it was on the set, from the lowliest PA, no matter who it was. I'm still in touch with some of the PAs. I mean, it's just there was a bonding there. And people were really trying to say something too. It was a show that had a point of view, and everybody shared in that point of view, and it had a message, and everybody was sharing in that message, and you couldn't help but get caught up in that, and it was fulfilling in that sense. It was fulfilling because you felt like you're not just entertaining; it was you were doing something important.
Yeah, I've been meaning to see it, so I'll definitely dive into that one. You've done so many guest stars. Do you find that you're often been welcomed, like when these people at these shows are already running, or do you always feel like the new guy who's trying to fit in?
Boy, there's a real, the guest star is a very underrated position. Because you do have to jump right in to the whole crew, and everybody knows the lead actors. The lead actors know their characters backwards and forwards. They're comfortable with the situation. Every set is a little different, has a different vibe. So over the years, I've kind of developed the skill that I could be 5 minutes in the makeup chair when I first get there at 6:30 in the morning and just get a feel for the set, just from the chatter that's going on, just from the vibe, just from the sense of tension, if there's tension, if there isn't tension. So I adapt pretty quickly. I've been on, and I used to love doing the Bochco shows, the Stephen Bochco shows. Like I walked on NYPD Blue. I already knew Jimmy Smits, who was the lead actor at the time, because he was on LA Law. I was on LA Law with him. And then, and Kim Delaney was also on LA Law with me. And this was her first episode on NYPD Blue. So but again, that was a kind of show where they brought you in. What do you think about this scene? And it was just welcoming. But I've gone on other shows where, you're just like a hired hand, and And you could usually tell it's usually the number one on the call sheet that really sets the tone, the lead actor, and you never know how it's going to go. You hear stories about a certain actor and then you get on the set and it's not at all what you thought. Like one of the best sets I ever worked on was like NCIS, I think.
Oh yeah,
with Mark Harmon. I walked on the set. I remember it was like 6 o'clock in the morning, 5:30. It was cold. It was dark. And I'm looking around. All the crew guys are smiling. Everybody's happy. I'm saying,
good.
What's going on here? And something just popped up on my. Remind me later. Something just popped up on my screen.
No problem.
There you are. So I said, "What's going on?" And I just, as the day went on, I realized it's Mark Harmon. He's just so welcoming. So I played I played a mobster, shocking, and I had a guy that just played my driver. I think maybe he had one line. And I remember I was sitting talking to Mark, and he was so warm and welcoming. He'd like, I guess he had IMDb'd me, and he's asking about my, referring to things I've been in. And then he calls over the guy that has an extra, or maybe he had one line. Oh, come here. Ray and I were just talking, and he pulls him and he gives him a seat and pulls him, and you just felt like a guest. You're a guest star. I felt like a guest in his home, and he was treating me like a guest. And there are certain shows you do, and they treat you like that. And to me, that's the way to be, because look, you're all there. You just want to have the best scene, the best show, the best episode that you could possibly make it with whatever you're doing. And so why not be welcoming? And he was one of those guys. And there's quite a few sets like that. There are some that aren't like that, but I won't mention any names. But I've been on some where it's like, really? I've been here a week and you're not even saying good morning to me? Really? And there are those guys or women.
Of course. But,
But it's a tough thing because you do have to walk. I remember the biggest challenge I had as a guest star, I think, was on Night Court. That's probably before your time. But that was a very popular sitcom. Now, sitcoms are done in front of a live audience. The audience knows these characters so well. They know what to laugh at. They already know the background of these people. So when you go on as a guest star, it's like the audience doesn't know you. So you have to jump in so fast. And my first one was a huge guest star part. And that was very challenging to fit into their rhythm, their comic rhythms, for the audience to accept you when they already know all the main characters already. So guest starring is a different animal than anything else that you do, because you got to just jump in, No, I can just even in Toronto, I know from, having day player parts. It's that, it's either going to be a guest star. It's either going to be a nightmare, or it's going to be a lot of, not a nightmare, but not so fun. They can be a nightmare. I mean, if they're treating you just like, like I don't want to say extra, but if you're not getting any kind of, it's hard to do your best work, But,
exactly.
But if you have a director, or you have the other lead actor who's working with you and is supportive, it just lifts the whole project, So
absolutely. Was Dynasty a good experience? Was that something you enjoyed doing?
I did. It was never a show that I had ever watched. It was never a show that I ever imagined I would be on in a million years. I was this kind of New Yorkie Italian guy, and that show was in Denver, and they were all waspy and very rich. And it's like, this is, with the coiffed hair, and my hair was kind of just long and blowing. And but they found a little niche for me, and I found a little way to go. And I developed a good relationship with my co-star, who I played Emma Sam's boyfriend on that. And we really found a good rhythm and a fun way to play off each other. So and plus I hadn't done that much. I certainly hadn't done a series before. So it was just fun to develop a character and get comfortable with the crew and that whole aspect of it. I enjoyed very much. It was a great learning experience, and I had a lot of fun. And you got the feeling of a little bit of stardom too. I remember by the time I was on,
huge show,
but by the time I got on, it was already dying here in the States.
Right.
But in Europe, it was still huge. And I went to England while I was on the show, and I couldn't get in a cab or walk into a restaurant where the maitre d' or the cab driver didn't know my name.
That's awesome.
It was, and then I got home, and it's like I get my own luggage. Nobody knows who the hell I am. But it was like, who do they think I am? You know, they were reacting. It was like, who do they think I am? Who is it? You know, I remember I went to see a play with Dustin Hoffman. He was doing Merchant of Venice in London.
Oh yeah.
And so I went to see it. I went, oh, this is a great little story. You don't mind me just telling these stories, do you?
No, go ahead. I would love to have seen that.
Well, it was amazing. And, you know, I remembered he was friends with Freddie Karaman, the acting teacher I told you about, right? But earlier. And he had studied at, you know, Dustin studied at the Neighborhood Playhouse. So he's friends with Win Handman, that whole thing. He actually started doing plays at Win Handman's theater, the American Place Theater. So after I saw Merchant of Venice, I was with Emma, and I gave a note to the usher. My name is Ray Abruzzo. I'm an actor from New York. We're doing this series Dynasty, but I studied with Freddie and Win. I just wrote a note and I handed it to the usher. The usher comes back in 10 minutes and says, Dustin would like you to come backstage.
Oh.
So we go back to Dustin's dressing room. He's just done The Merchant of Venice. We walk in, tiny, tiny dressing room. You know, you expect them to have this big, beautiful, tiny dressing room with like a cot. And we sit down, he's bare chested and he's taking off all the, you know, the Shylock makeup.
Yeah.
And we're talking about Freddie and Win and what are you guys doing here? We were doing some publicity for the show. And then there's a knock on the door. And he gets up and he opens the door and I see his face just kind of go white. He just kind of, and this older couple come in, really old couple. It turns out they're the parents of the kid that he modeled the Rain Man character after, that he studied for Rain Man, right?
Wow.
So they come in and they hug him and they say, oh, we were just visiting and we saw that you were doing this play, so we got tickets and we just want to tell you our son, I can't remember his name, is doing so well since the movie came out. He takes the bus by himself. I'm sitting on the cot and they're hugging and I'm sobbing. It was one of the most emotional, beautiful moments. And it
oh my God.
Yeah, it was
talk about good timing.
It was it was truly, and I've never seen Dustin Hoffman again since that night. So if you're watching, because I think he watches your show, doesn't he, Robert?
Oh yeah, of course. He's on tomorrow.
I'm glad he's following. I like being the opening act for Dustin Hoffman.
How was that production?
It was great. You know,
yeah.
I thought he was remarkable in it. Yeah, he really was. I think they did a film version of it or a PBS.
With Pacino. You mean with him?
I think he did. Oh yeah, Pacino did it too. But I think I saw some kind of film version of.
There is some clips of him rehearsing it on YouTube. I know with who directed that? The big British theater. God, it's escaping me. But yeah, you can find some clips of the rehearsal. I believe
it was amazing. It was a great. And then here's the other point. Well, when Emma and I came out of the theater, the paparazzi were there and they chased us back to our hotel. This is me getting back to you saying,
oh, right, because
I was on Dynasty. Nothing. But there, and they slept out in the lobby. All night long, the paparazzi just waiting downstairs at the hotel.
Oh my God, I
got home, like I said, and it was like, yeah, who are you? So it was fun to step into somebody else's shoes of being famous. That was the most famous. That might have been the most famous I had ever been for that 20 minutes.
That's a great story.
In London in 1989. Yeah.
What did he say to you, Dustin? Was it a long conversation or anything?
Well, once those people came in, it was I'm just watching. You know, that was it. I just watched this sweet old couple and them hugging and just the serendipity that they would just happen to be in London and saw his name on the marquee and were able to get tickets and come backstage and. I was just a fly on the wall. That's exactly what it was. And I just watched. But he was very warm and welcoming, of course, because we had the common teachers and friends. So that was nice. And,
that's great.
Yeah.
At what point we're talking about you working at a liquor store and different things. At what point did you just trust that you could chuck the jobs and just act? Was it with LA Law?
No, tomorrow. I think I might.
You're not there yet. I don't. We never get there, do we?
No, you don't, unless you're, George Clooney or Brad Pitt or Tom Hanks or one of those guys that used to be, Beatty and Nicholson or those guys. I always feel like, I'm still trying. I'm still just out of college, trying to get that first job, trying to get that next job. that aspect has never changed with me. So I always feel that kind of hunger. But interesting, the pandemic kind of settled it down for me, because for 40 years, at the end of the day or the end of the week, I'd say, I didn't have any auditions this week. I didn't get a job this week. Ray Romano got a job this week. Andy Garcia got a job. Oh, I see Ray Liotta shooting.
All the Rays.
All the Rays. I'm not doing it. I didn't get another job. And then the pandemic hit, and I was still in that mode. And then all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute, nobody's working.
No one's working.
And I kind of just relaxed. And I felt this weight off my shoulders that I hadn't felt in my entire career. And I thought, well, I could still, pay the bills. I'm okay right now, for a while. So it's very relaxing. So I'm going to try to hang on to that.
Good. Yeah.
I'm going to try to hang on.
Enjoy it.
There's nothing worse than the stink of desperation when you go in for an audition. I call it like, they kind of, when you walk in, they kind of wrinkle their nose like you stepped in desperation, and they smell it all over you. The key to get them going into audition is not having that.
That dying need to work.
I mean,
gotta hide it.
You have to have it because you want to do your best, but you can't show it because then they don't want you. So,
exactly.
Yeah,
you never win, right?
No, it's a balancing act for sure.
You've done, we're just talking about, going on all these different shows. You never know what you're going to expect and stuff. Is there anything that, to me, that sounds, well, naturally for all actors, that sounds like that creates anxiety. Is there anything that helps you with nerves, or do you just kind of, go for it?
Well, what helps me is being prepared,
Right.
I'm going to be, when I get to the rehearsal on a TV show, I'm going to know my lines. Right. I'm going to have a concept of my character. It might change. The director certainly could, the key is to go in there with a very strong point of view and to be prepared and to know your lines, yet be flexible enough that they could throw you a curveball, or the director say, no, that's not at all what I had in mind for this. And that happens. So to ease your anxiety, the best thing to do is be prepared.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah.
How did, because I know you were the head writer on this show called Wienerville. Did you, and you directed as well. Have you written outside of that? Or is writing something you do a lot?
Well, I will say this. I did not write the name of the show, Wienerville. Okay, that wasn't mine.
Right.
I just want to go on record. Wienerville was not part of my writing. No, I was, after college, I started this group with the same guy, Pat Sherrata, who started the Middle Village Summer Theater Workshop. We started a theater in Manhattan called the Bond Street Theater Coalition, which was doing a lot of physical theater, Commedia dell'arte. We'd perform in the parks. We'd pull up in a truck, jump out, do a show with puppets and masks, and then jump back in the truck and drive away. So at one point, I left the group because I wanted to be a more traditional actor. And they asked me to come back and direct a play that they were doing. So I went back, and they had this actor who was not an actor. He was a mime, actually a street performer, juggler, but he was going to be in this show. And it was a lot of ad libs and stuff. So I started directing him in it, and I thought, he has such a unique quality, and he was so funny so he was performing on the streets, juggling and doing mime. So I started feeding him like little lines to throw into his act on the streets, and it kind of really worked. And then we brought his act into the nightclubs, and then performing at the Improv, Catch a Rising Star, and a regular bit. So I started writing for him. We ended up doing several clips on Saturday Night Live. This is back in 78, 79. So we did a couple of cold opens on Saturday Night Live. It was that was another whole experience. It was great. And then he got this show, Wienerville, for Nickelodeon. And I was already living out in LA and acting and been on a lot of shows. And he couldn't find somebody to get his groove with the writing. So he asked me to come on board and be the head writer. So I flew back to New York and took over the writing of the show and hired some other writers. And then I ended up directing, and that's how it happened.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And have you have you done writing anything outside of working with him?
I have. I've written stuff, but I have never pushed it or pursued it as much as I probably should. I have some ideas. I'm going to start working on something. Carl Capatordo, who played little Paulie on The Sopranos. I don't know if you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well,
he's a writer. Yeah.
He is a writer, right? So
That's right.
and he's one of my closest friends, and he wrote for Vinyl. He wrote for Tommy, Edie Falco's last show, and he wrote for The Deuce. He's a terrific writer, a great playwright too. So we wrote one thing together, and now we have another idea we're kicking around. So
oh, great!
As soon as he finishes his next project, that's what I need, somebody like him.
Yeah.
To kind of push me
bounce things off.
Yeah. Did you ever see The Making of Cleaver?
Yes. Yeah, I love that.
I actually, when you said bounce things off, because there's a moment where Christopher, Michael, but as Christopher,
oh,
says,
right.
Yeah, I really needed somebody to, and I say bounce things off, and he goes bounce things off. It's that whole thing. That whole
it's improvised, right?
Completely improvised.
Yeah.
They just said, sit down, and we're just going to, you stay in character, and we'll just talk to you. And that's one of my favorite pieces from The Sopranos, is that Making of Cleaver. But when you said bounce it off, that's what reminded me.
Right.
I actually,
I rewatched it recently, so maybe that's why it came to mind.
But I'm going to tell you something. I actually stole that. We were talking about Pacino from a movie called Author.
Oh, I love that movie.
Well, there's a scene where Alan, the comedian Alan, plays his manager.
Alan Bates?
No. You'll know him as soon as you see him. He was a comedian, but he plays the producer of the play that Pacino's doing it. And Pacino's saying, I need somebody to bounce it off. And he takes the script. I'm going to bounce it off you.
Oh, right.
And he throws it.
Yeah, in his house. Yeah, I love that.
In his doorway. I'm going to bounce it off. And that, I actually, when we were doing that thing, and he said, I need somebody to, and that popped into my head, and I said, bounce it off. So that's where that came from.
Perfect.
So I stole it.
I love stole it from the best.
I did steal it from the best. Yeah.
I love when Christopher talks about how the writer, or maybe it was you, who says the writer is such a visionary, and then they cut to Christopher threatening this guy to write the friggin' thing,
and then they slam him over the head with the and actually,
clipboard or whatever.
I think it's called Capitordo that does that, if I'm not mistaken. That slams him or Benny, one of those two.
Oh yeah, I think you're right.
I think it's one. I think they're the one to pay him the visit. It's the way Hollywood works.
Yeah, of course. I love your story about your audition tape. Instead of saying Versailles, you said Versailles, because in the breakdown, for anyone who doesn't know, anyone watching, they suggested, well, they wrote that, that he's smart. He's smarter. He thinks he's smarter than he is. Do you often, when you get a breakdown, try to be inventive off of it? Because some people say, "Oh, just ignore the breakdown, be yourself." But you really got that from the breakdown, which was very clever.
I did, because the rest of the breakdown described them as being 250, 300 pounds,
right,
sweating profusely with a twitching eye. So I kind of dismissed those because I thought, well, I don't have to work on that. I already got that. So,
yeah. I was going to say that's perfect.
Well, I might not have noticed the other thing had it described me more physically. I might not have looked deeper for that other aspect of it.
Yeah,
possibly. I don't know, but it just came to me that I have to do something. So I said Versailles, and it turned. I mean, they had already had him written that way.
Right.
But that was the clincher. There was nothing in that. There were no malaprops written necessarily into that scene, but they had that in mind previously. I'm not going to take credit for the character, but I will take credit for getting the part, because I did.
Was there much rehearsal on Sopranos? Or is it very? I mean, most TVs like nothing, right? Or so. Yeah, how was that process?
Like most other TV shows, they did more takes than other shows because they had the time and the money. But the rehearsal process was not that much longer. I mean, I remember rehearsing more on NYPD Blue because Jimmy Smits liked to rehearse. So I remember he and I had a big scene together, and he said, "Come on, let's just go in the other room while they were shooting the other scene," and we just worked on the scene. And that's not usual, where the number one on the call sheet says, "Come on, let's work on this." As two act, because the writing was particularly good on NYPD Blue to begin with. That's a big difference too, how good the writing is.
That's true. Sometimes
you don't need that much rehearsal. I mean, I've done shows where for years all I said is, "You have the right to remain silent."
Yeah.
Do I need to rehearse that again? So, but some shows, you know, they're a little deeper, and there wasn't that much more rehearsal on it. You know, you do takes, and then they give you adjustments within the takes. You know, we're going to do another take this time. Try this, do this. You know, but there wasn't a lot of real hardcore rehearsal for The Sopranos that I remember.
I know you got cast from doing a tape and sending it in. Do you prefer self-tape versus in-person auditioning, or what do you like better?
I believe that was the first self-tape I ever did.
Oh, wow.
Well,
there you go.
It wasn't a thing.
Yeah, 20 years ago. No, yeah.
No, and the reason, and I wasn't even going to do it, but I had a recurring role on a show called The Practice, which was a David Kelly show. And I think I did 50 episodes of The Practice, saying you have the right to remain silent. But there was an actor that came on, and he ended up David. Michael Eis. I can't remember his name. It's going to bother me because he ended up
Sopranos or the
no, he came on to The Practice. He ended up being on a bunch of other shows. You'll know once I tell you his name, you'll know him. But it's been 25 years. Anyway, he came on. He came out to LA, and he said he was from New York, and he's playing this part of a serial killer. And he was a little guy, but he had this something going on in his eyes. I remember there was a scene I was interrogating him, and he was damn spooky. And I remember in that scene, how'd you get this part? Because then he says, I put myself on tape. I said, what? He said, yeah, I did I'd never even heard of a self-tape before.
All right.
And he got the part, and he ended up winning an Emmy for Best Guest Star, which is unheard of because usually Best Guest Stars are like some big name, you know, like Alan Alda guest stars on something and he wins best. You know, it's always a name that's a special guest star. That's who wins. But he won the Emmy for it, if I remember correctly. And that was the first time I heard of a self-tape. And then I thought, well, wait a minute, he got that part from a self-tape. Okay, I'll give this a shot. And that's but before then, no, that was a very rare thing. And like I said, you had to do it on VHS, and you had to FedEx. You had to get it to FedEx by 4:30 that afternoon because they wanted it that next morning. Now it's just you just hit a button and it's gone.
Oh, I know, it's so easy. And people still have a hard time with it.
It is. I find them challenging because sometimes you have to do them in a day, and there might be. In the old days, when you walked into auditions, that you were told to hold the script. Right. And when you auditioned in the old days, always hold the script. If you haven't memorized, hold the script. Read it from the script. Otherwise, they think that's as good as it's going to get. That's what we were taught. And when you're in a room with somebody auditioning, and they're holding the sides, and they're looking down and reading, and they're looking down and reading, somehow your mind accepts it. But when you're here on these self-tapes, if you look down and look back, it's gone. They're going on to the next. The energy is gone. In the room, it works. On this, it doesn't work at all. You have to stay focused like you're shooting the thing. You have to have a clear and concise eye line. So the challenge of these self-tapes is sometimes, we need it in 2 hours. Yeah, but it's 8 pages of dialogue. And you have to memorize it. I have to find somebody to read off camera.
Yeah.
I have to get the sound going. Wait, the sun's setting. I don't have good light in this room. I got to get lights set up. What am I going to wear? It could be very stressful.
It is. Yeah.
You're now the editor. You're the cinematographer. You're the director. And I'm not a good self-critic anyway. So because I would just keep doing them over and over. But I have mixed feelings about them. I'd still rather go in the room.
Right.
I'd rather go in the room for the simple reason what I like are the adjustments. In the old days, you'd go in with a take on the character, and you do it. And if they liked it or they didn't like it, the director might say, hey, I like that, but pull back on this moment here, maybe a more direct, and they give you a note and they see how you adjust, and you're developing a relationship and you're performing in that moment. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that much more than the self-tape stuff because plus the self-tape thing, you become so self-conscious as well.
Right.
You become so hypercritical. Oh my God, I got to trim my eyebrows. What am I, how can I, I don't like it. So the answer to your question, no, I don't like it.
Did you have much time when for the Sopranos self-tape, or was it very quick?
A day. That was immediate. Oh no, that was same day.
So it was
same
very.
Day. I had.
Did you memorize it and all that, or did you hold? Oh, you did. Okay.
No, I memorized it. I'm fortunate, and even 20 years ago, I was better than I am now at memorizing. You do lose that, by the way. Hang on to it, Robert. Hang on as long as you can, Robert. Yeah, I had read for another part, the part of the guy that does the intervention for Christopher a few weeks before.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It's
Yeah, in season
one,
3.
Yeah, a one scene, one episode character, and I didn't get it. And then I thought they said, well, they like you, but maybe if there's something down the line, I thought, yeah. And then little Carmine came up and they wanted me to read for that. So
there you go. How was Frankie Valli to work with on that? He was your consigliere, right?
Yeah, and Frankie lives out. I'm out in LA, and Frankie lives in LA too. So they put us up in the same apartment area. We stayed in the same hotel. We had our own apartments. So we ate every meal together, and it was sometimes I'll be sitting there. We'd have dinner. He took me to Rayo's up in Harlem, the famous place in Rayo's, and just sitting around having breakfast, or any restaurant we go to. It's just like, I'm sitting here with Frankie Valli.
Yeah, pinch myself.
And I remember him telling me, "Yeah, Ray, there's this guy. He wrote this musical about my life. They're going to do it down in San Diego." And I said, "Yeah, Frankie, that's going to be a big hit." Needless to say,
sure enough, it's still on.
It's still on. Probably more productions of that than anything anywhere. Yeah.
Oh God, yeah. Well, that I forget the name of the actor who just recently passed away, who was Tony's father in the flashbacks.
Yeah, oh my God, Joseph, lovely. I only met him. The Sopranos was such a big cast. I met him a few times. He actually did a play. I did a play out here, and then he played the same part when they did it in New York. So we had that kind of connection. And the last Broadway play I went to in New York before the shutdown was Network. I went to see Network on Broadway.
Oh, with Bryan Cranston.
And when the play was over, I stood up and Joe was behind me. We had never really met. Oh. And that was the first time we met, and it was the last play I went to on Broadway. And now I just heard that he passed away. But apparently everybody I've spoken to is apparently a really lovely guy, very talented actor. I think he taught. He had his master's. I think he taught at NYU. He seemed like a really great guy. We've lost a lot. We've lost a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, on that show. Yeah, just rewatching some episodes recently, I was like, Frank Vincent, and now James Gandolfini, of course, and the who you're talking about, who played his father. The reason I brought it up is because I don't know if I imagine he did it in the States, but here in Toronto, he was doing Jersey Boys as the gangster in that, because I worked at a theater as an usher many years ago, and he was in it
with Al Sapienza. Wasn't Al?
Oh, Sapienza? I wish I could remember the names in the cast.
Al Sapienza, who played. Was
he the lead?
No, Frankie? He played another guy, or maybe the manager. He played Mickey Palmisi on the show. He played Junior's consigliere in the first season. He got killed. He got killed in the first season.
Yeah, no, I know who you mean. No, he wasn't in it in Toronto at least.
He did. He did.
Oh, really?
He did.
Maybe I didn't recognize him.
Or maybe they didn't. Maybe he did it a couple of times, but I know they did it together at one point in Toronto. I know that.
Okay, yeah, because I remember him more for that, because I would see, as I worked there, I would see the show every day.
Wow.
Knew it by heart practically. But
I did that too. I remember there was some Sam Shepard plays in the 70s. Buried Child and Curse of the Starving Class. Great plays.
I love Buried Child.
And True West.
Oh, great play.
So, True West had just come to New York for the first time, because they first did it, I think, at Steppenwolf in Chicago, Gary Sinise and Malkovich, and then they were doing it. Forgot the name of the theater downtown, but I volunteered to usher, just so I could see the play over and over, because it was such an amazing production. Those guys.
They would switch who would play each part.
They didn't do that. You know who did that years later?
That was Phil Hoffman.
C. Riley and somebody else did that.
Philip Seymour.
Yeah, Phil. Yeah. There's another loss.
Yeah. He was phenomenal.
I can only imagine what between him and Gandolfini, you can only imagine what the future would have held for those two guys.
Yeah. I know.
Both of them, I think they, oddly enough, as great as their work was, I think they both had greater work ahead of them. So.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of just talking about some actors who, I know you mentioned, Pacino was an inspiration for you to become an actor. Who else was someone you really admired when you were younger?
Well, Pacino and De Niro at that period of
Yeah.
time, once I really started diving in, obviously those were the guys you go to. But early on, Jason Robards always, for some reason, deeply effective. Peter Falk, I used to love to watch.
Oh, I love Falk.
Cassavetes, I know you're a
Yeah.
Cassavetes fan.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I always thought I kind of had a Cassavetes look about me. I always hoped that one day I'd end up in a Cassavetes film, but he left us. Another guy left us way too soon, way too early,
soon.
with a lot more to go on. Yeah. I'm going to tell you a story I've never told before.
Please do.
You want to hear it?
Oh, yeah.
So this goes back to the Dynasty day. I've never told this story. This goes back to the Dynasty days, and Emma was in the hospital with some back issue at Cedars-Sinai Hospital here in Beverly Hills, and they have a floor that's kind of like a celebrity floor because they just, the paparazzi and everybody gets crazy out here.
Right.
So I came out of Emma's room after visiting her one day, and I looked down the hallway, all the way down this long hallway, and I saw Jenna Rollins come out of a door with her two young daughters, and they huddled together and they hugged. And I thought, oh no. And I just walked away very quickly, went in the elevator, got down. By the time I got home, I heard that Cassavetes had just died at Cedars-Sinai Hospital.
And you were there. My God. Wow.
And I could picture them. I could, as soon as they came out of the room, I knew what it was. It's like I knew it had happened. It was just, there's a certain feeling you have when people hug a certain way.
Yeah.
You knew that that's what it was. And so it's like a still in my brain of looking down this long, there's nobody else on that floor, just looking down this long hallway, and they came out of the end room, and the three of them, Jenna in the middle and the two daughters on either side. And so you got that story, Roberto.
I appreciate you sharing that. That's because I know from our chat box there's some Cassavetes fans watching that I know from various film Facebook groups. There were some questions that I saw. If anyone has questions, please feel free to. Oh my God, I should have been asking some of these as we went along. Let me see here. Maybe or a lot of them are perhaps just comments. Yeah.
Well, if they're good, say them. Don't just blow past them if they're good, Robert.
At first I tried to figure. Cleaver was the best part with Carmine giving the speech from Red Clark. Sexy Monkey says, "Hey, there he is. I'm a big time fan of The Sopranos from day one." Yes,
that's a great speech, Terry Winter's speech, where the film is like a child, and by aversion has many parents. That was a scary scene to shoot because every series regular was there, and I had only worked, with Chris, with Michael. I had worked with, I'd never worked with everybody, and this was a scene where that auditorium was full with about 200 extras plus every series regular, and I had to give that speech. So it was a little that was fun.
Yeah. Oh, I bet. Yeah. And he's asking about Script Fellas. What was that? About Script Fellas.
Script Fellas was a short film. Wow. Where do these people find these things?
Yeah. This is Red Clark. Maybe someone I don't know.
No,
he's asking
I don't know.
About Script Fellas.
I would never know anybody named Red Clark. Script Fellas was a short film. I read for the lead in it, but ended up Paul Sorvino ended up doing it. And I played, it was a spoof on Goodfellas, but about Hollywood, and there was Script Fellas. So they were all agents and producer people, but they were like mobsters. And Sorvino played the head of the studio, and I played Johnny Two Times or whatever his name was. I read the coverage where he said everything twice. We shot it in one day. Yeah. It was pretty fun. Paul Karafotos was in it. Paul Sorvino. That was a long time ago. I barely remember. It was one day. I literally just drove.
I wonder if that's easy to find.
And the director, I wish I could remember the director's name because he's gone on. He was a kid. I think at the time he was like Spielberg's assistant or a PA on a Spielberg film. So he thought, well, then I'm going to go because he knows Steven Spielberg. So I'll do this. And he ended up being a big TV. He directs a lot of television, a lot of like Chicago PDs, those kind of things. And he's never hired me. That
Oh,
guy.
Jesus, what's wrong with this guy?
I don't know.
Well, there you go. I'll have to see if I have to find that.
If he's sitting here watching with Dustin, maybe
that's tomorrow. I'll bring it up.
Okay.
You had mentioned with you became after Sopranos ended, everyone of course knew you as Little Carmine, and sometimes you get pigeonholed as that gangster kind of role. Was that hard for a while to get work when that ended, or
it was really hard. I had been working pretty steady before then. Before the Sopranos, I always played cops and lawyers, mostly cops. And then the Sopranos came along, and then when the Sopranos ended, they said, well, he's got this whole mobster thing, so they wouldn't see me as anything but mobsters. And I didn't want to do another mobster thing, especially on some silly guest star show, where, so I, for a little period of time, I could afford to say, no, I don't want to play a mobster on Walker, Texas Ranger. So no, I'm just throwing that out there, but on some show. So, but then eventually I started playing mobsters again because I needed the money.
You're like, screw it.
But screw it. Yeah, there'll never be another Little Carmine. But no, like I played a mobster on a lot of shows. That NCIS was a very different character, but he was a mobster, it was difficult because there was definitely a double-edged sword. All of a sudden you were known more than you were before, but then you were known for this particular thing. So it really did hurt, and it took a few years before it started to now pay off. That's when I started to do some plays, because I'd get offered to play like these plays out of town because of the Sopranos. So I'd say, all right, well, I'll ride that wave. It's something I want to do anyway, So yeah, it was a double-edged. I worked less after the Sopranos for the first couple of years after the Sopranos than I did before. I worked more before the Sopranos than after the Sopranos, which is completely. You would have thought it was, once you're on the Sopranos, everybody knows who you are. You're going to work more. It was the complete opposite for me for a while. Then after a couple of years, then it kind of worked its way out.
I'm surprised because Little Carmine is not your your typical gangster. Like he was, he wasn't necessarily from that world.
Except that he was more from the world than all the other guys, but he kind of.
It took a back, sort of a.
I don't know. It was just that. And then it worked two ways. Then there were mob shows where they didn't want to use anybody from The Sopranos because, like, oh well, we don't want people to think we're trying to redo The Sopranos. Then there were other shows where they only wanted you because you were on The Sopranos, but they weren't that good. So it was, it was a tough period of time.
Yeah, and not only that, you were often hilarious in the show. It wasn't like you had dramatic parts, but it was a lot of comedy. Like even just watching the other night when you had that sit down with Frank Vincent and Gandolfini, and you're making the truce, and then everything's fine, and then I love how you hesitated. Oh yeah, and your cousin too,
your brother Billy.
Sorry, your brother Billy. That's it.
Whatever happened there? Something that line might be the most often quoted line back to me. Whatever happened there? Whenever I post anything on Instagram, somebody always writes, "Oh yeah, your horse. Whatever happened there? Oh, you grew a beard. Whatever happened there?"
Yeah.
Everything is whatever happened there. I shouldn't say this, but that's going to probably be on my tombstone. Whatever happened there.
Yeah, whatever happened. Yeah, perfect.
Whatever happened there.
Was that it was because I know that this Sopranos con started in the last few. How was that? That looked like must have been pretty fun.
I've never done any kind of, there was some after Dynasty has a lot of kind of soap, kind of those things. I've never done any of them. And then Sopranos Con came along and they kept pitching, well, you want to come do this? And I don't know, sit there. And it was a blast. It was chaotic.
Yeah.
There were like 10,000 people in there. It was, and it was, the lines for pictures and autographs and the crowds. And these are fans. They came from all over the world, and they know the show.
Yeah,
they know every line of the show. So it really was. It was pretty amazing. The show and that was right before the pandemic actually hit. I think, if I remember correctly, last September before the 2019. Yeah, I mean, The Sopranos has had this huge resurgence, just
Mm.
all over the world. I mean, young fans. I do these cameo videos. I don't know if you know what they are, but
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
Australia, Ireland. Oh, my brother's turning 18. He's watched the show 4 times, so it has this whole new. It's
The
quite
next
amazing.
generation,
It
yeah.
has a whole 2 more generations.
Right.
From it's quite amazing that it holds up, and they don't just watch it once. They watch it 2, 3,
Yeah,
4 times, and they know it, and they break it down, and they understand it. And
yeah.
yeah, I think I think it's a show they'll be talking about. I always knew it was a great show, but I didn't realize it would have the legs it has now, still to this day.
Why do you think it has resonated so much?
Well, I think all the stars aligned for that show. David Chase was given free reign pretty much at HBO. They had a pretty good budget. He casted brilliantly, if I say so myself, and and the writing was spectacular, and it was all new ground.
Mm,
So everything that came after Breaking Bad, Mad Men, any of these other shows wouldn't have happened had it not been for the
that's
Sopranos.
true.
They
Yeah,
they created that genre. They allowed cable to have that kind of depth of writing, where that's why you get big stars doing, even Pacino and all
right.
these people. Because now with
Going to TV. Yeah,
well, now because the writing, and you could explore a character. Now they do these 8-episode mini, shows for 8 episodes,
yeah,
whatever they are. So you get into a character longer than you could doing a 90-minute film or a 2-hour film, and it's
that's
not the
true.
grind of a network television show where you're doing 22 episodes a season. You could
Right.
so the writing is richer, and I think ultimately, if it ain't on the page, as they say, I think The Sopranos opened the door for some deeper. You can't get much more deep in the writing as it did for Gandolfini's character,
Oh, for sure.
and the layers. I mean, that show is so layered. That's why you can watch
Mm,
it 4 or 5 times, because you'll notice something else. If
yeah,
something happens in season 1 pays off in season 3, or you know what I mean. It's just it's got so much texture to it, and I
yeah,
think in richness that it warrants several viewings. And I think that's
yeah.
why it's got the longevity, and it's groundbreaking. It's like when you first start listening to music. If you start listening to jazz and you like a certain jazz artist, then you hear that jazz artist said, well, I was inspired by Miles Davis. Who? And then the kid goes back and starts listening to Miles Davis. I think that might be happening with this. Somebody will watch Breaking Bad or Mad Men, and then they'll hear somebody say, well, The
Yeah,
Sopranos started all, and then they go back to watch where it all started, because it is really where it all started. It changed. It
yeah.
sounds like a cliche to say, but it changed television.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. I never thought of that. That's true. It's like, what inspired this show? Well, Sopranos, and then
Right. Yeah.
you're gonna want to go and see
See
that
the original, right? Yeah.
exactly. I listened to you in an interview, and when you said before you were on the show, when you were watching it, you felt that it was offensive towards Italians, particularly when they killed the stripper when
Yeah.
Ralphie killed. Do you think that I know people have, even when I've Googled it, there are people who feel that way. Do you think that's valid?
I do. I do, and I felt that way at the time. I watched the first few seasons. I was just amazed by the writing, and then that scene came along, and it was kind of so disturbing to me. And I understand why David did it. It was kind of a genius of why David put that scene in there, because I think he felt that people were looking up to these characters a bit too much,
Yeah,
forgetting
right.
who they are. And these guys should not be admired. I mean, they still are admired. When I read what people write, they want the violence, they want all that. But the show
Yeah,
was so much more than that. And I think what I realize is that the last episode is called Made in America. So I
right.
think what The Sopranos was just a metaphor for what America is in general, the
Mm,
corruption, and then yet it had the elements of real family life, taking his daughter to find a college at the same
right.
time. So all those things juxtaposed, I think, is what made it what it is. But I think the story that it tells is bigger than just about Italians in the mob.
Yeah.
I think it's about the corruption and the depravity and everything else that's in society in general.
And that I don't know what's at a certain, well, I guess really from the beginning he was constantly reminding you that these people were not that they were bad. Like when I think of like the appraiser, like when civilians would get
the
totally
waiter that
ruined.
wanted a bigger tip, that asked for a tip when they
Oh
couldn't.
right, and they shoot him. Yeah,
Oh my God!
yeah,
Yeah. And it's amazing. Even now, to me, it bothers me sometimes when I read people's comments on social media that stuff doesn't bother them. You know,
I've noticed that as well, and there's a lot of the different groups I've been in. I was
people. There are people that hate Little Carmine. Hate
right.
Little Carmine. Why?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't a cold, ruthless killer that was.
Yeah. They want
so,
the guy to be everyone to be awful.
They want me to come in with a baseball bat and smash somebody over the head.
Right.
Which is that's unfortunate. I think because the show's deeper than that. The show is
yes.
But I think that's why the show had such appeal, because it works on so many different levels. You saw the humor in it. You had the mobster stuff, and you had the family relationship stuff, and you had the therapist stuff. I think that's exactly why the show worked. And I'm sure there's plenty of chat rooms where you'll find people talking about the psychological aspects of it or the sociological implications of the show.
And to me, that's the most interesting part about it. I mean, I started watching it when I was 15, 16, so young, and I probably reacted like what you're describing, the surface level of things. But when I was just recently rewatching some of the episodes, I had a hard time watching it because I was like, I really hate a lot of these things. I mean, I was, sometimes I was getting pulled into feeling bad for them, and then they would do something so despicable, and it's not an easy watch.
No, it's not. That was the genius of David Chase, is that he would, like you said, keep reminding people who they were. I mean, people idolize Tony, and I mean, he wasn't a great guy. You know what I mean?
No.
He was, we love Gandolfini, but Tony was not you wouldn't want Tony as your friend. You wouldn't want.
No, God, no.
Yeah. So
I wouldn't want to be the Artie. Would be his best friend who wasn't in the mob.
Right.
Oh God.
Yeah.
But you did that film. We're talking about De Niro, because I know you were in that film. I haven't seen it, but Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Did you have scenes with you had Michael Douglas, Morgan Freeman, Kevin Kline? I mean, did you? What was that like?
I was shooting. I was shooting 3 things at the same time, maybe 4. It was like one of those weeks where all of a sudden, I haven't had one since, but I think I was shooting an episode of some sitcom, Happily Divorced, with Fran Drescher and Cyndi Lauper. Then I was also shooting an episode of Mad Men, and I was shooting a one-shot film that I was doing. I was rehearsing.
I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. And then they called. I said, "Can you want to be in this movie, Las Vegas?" I said, "Shoots one day." I said, "Oh, I can't really." Well, the scene is with Robert De Niro, Michael Douglas, and Morgan Freeman. I said, "Yeah, okay, I'll do it." So I literally flew to Vegas, stayed in a hotel one night, shot the scene. When the scene was over, got on the plane, came home. So
it was that quick. Yeah.
I didn't. They were lovely to work with. What I most remember is I remember De Niro walked past me. We were shooting in a casino. I played the floor boss in the casino, and this guy walks past me, and I think, oh, this is a little gray-haired guy. Holy shit, that's Robert De Niro. As he walked past me, and then he walks in front of the camera, and I'm by the monitor, and then he walks onto the camera, and I'm looking at it on the monitor. And I'm like, holy it's seeing this man walk by, and then as soon as he got in front of the camera, it was like this whole other thing happened, and I was just truly amazed at how diminutive he seemed until he stepped in front of the camera, and then it was Robert De Niro, and he didn't do anything. He literally just stepped in front of the camera. He was
he just has that presence.
He has that thing. He has that thing. There's certain people that have that presence. Gandolfini had that presence. You see him out in public, you're going to look at him. You know? So,
definitely.
There are all those people. Yeah. So
what I was going to ask this as well, but I noticed someone asked in the chat box some of your favorite films
that I like to watch. Okay, somebody was just asking me some films. I was, it's hard to say now, but I was always a big Woody Allen fan. I love movies like Crimes and Misdemeanors. I think is a
Yeah, that's a
brilliant
great
script.
movie.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's one of the best written scripts. It's a beautiful script. Hannah and Her Sisters is a beautiful film. Of
Yeah.
course, I love Sidney Lumet's work, Dog Day
Oh
Afternoon,
yeah, me too.
Serpico.
Yeah.
That's an era for me that I just love the filmmaking, and I love the sound of those films. I love the look at those films.
Me
I
too.
mean, again, that's an anti-hero. You have somebody like, Serpico was a flawed character, yet he's the hero of the movie, yet he's deeply flawed personally.
Yeah.
So I enjoy those are deep character-driven movies. So I like those, and of course, both Godfathers. I heard rumors they made a third, but both Godfathers. I really
It's coming out. Yeah. No.
Yeah, and and we already mentioned Cassavetes' Husbands, of course, and Killing of a Chinese Bookie.
Yeah.
Minnie and Moskowitz, I loved. I don't know if you know.
I
Minnie
love that. Oh yeah.
I watched Minnie and Moskowitz when I actually did a scene of it in Win Handman's class. We were talking. I took a scene from Minnie and Moskowitz and worked on it in class. And then when Michael and I were shooting the Cleaver stuff out here in LA when we were meeting Ben Kingsley, Michael was friends with Seymour Cassell, so he came to the set every day. So I got to hang out with him, and he was a character. And just to be sitting there with him after having 25 years earlier watched Minnie and Moskowitz over and over. That's a great film.
I love that.
It's hard to pick film. You'd have to pick eras and genres to really say what you like and what you. It's hard to just pull them out. I mean, I could even say like Jeremiah Johnson is a movie I really
Robert
love.
Redford,
I mean, that's a beautiful movie, and I love all the Christopher Guest movies.
Oh yeah.
Show, Waiting for Guffman. I love those movies. So it's quite a, I think even just the ones I named is a pretty eclectic.
No, those are all some of my favorites.
And they're all over the place
as well.
You can't really say you can't really say I like a certain thing. They're all
pretty diverse.
And the Coen Brothers movies, Fargo, and all the Coen Brothers movies, I love.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Another Red Clark's asking,
Red.
what kind of
Come on, Red.
Red Clark's back. What kind of part would you love to play? Something you haven't played yet.
Boy, that you don't know until you get it. I always think about who were we just talking about that was in Network? Cranston. Bryan Cranston, right? He had done that sitcom. What was that sitcom? Malcolm in the Middle or something.
Yeah.
Right? He was on a sitcom for years. And I always think about him. What if when Malcolm in the Middle ended, he then went on and did another sitcom playing another sitcom father? Would he even know? Would Bryan even know that he had the character from Breaking Bad in him? Would he even know that he could play LBJ like he did? You know what I mean? It's like you don't know until the part is there. I'd like to play more sophisticated characters now. I personally like to play some Italian Americans that aren't in the mob. I do like that. After interesting story. Right after The Sopranos, they asked me to play a federal prosecutor on Boston Legal at the time, and the character's name was like John Smith, or his name was inconsequential. But I knew the director. I had done a pilot with the director, and I had been on the practice for all those years. And I was playing a prosecutor. I said, "Can you do me a favor? Could you just make this guy's name Italian, just so we could see a federal prosecutor with an Italian last name?
Yeah.
He's not a mobster. He's not, he's just the prosecutor that has an Italian name." So they did that for me, and they changed the character's name just for a couple of episodes.
Good idea.
Yeah. But I got that from Joe Mantegna, who had he actually told me that story because he had done it he did a series called First Monday, I think it was called, where he played a Supreme Court justice, and he played an Italian-American Supreme Court justice. And I know Joe, and he had mentioned that the character originally wasn't Italian, and he asked them, and that kind of was in my head. So, I just think it's important to balance The Sopranos. Look, because it does exist. Nobody's going to say what went on in The Sopranos doesn't exist, but we can't forget everything else that's going. I could tell you a story about in the early 80s, I auditioned for a TV series to play a doctor, and the character's name was Italian, And he even had a thing where he's talking to his mother on the phone, Mama, you know, it was real, definitely Italian. So I went in and I tested at the network, at one of the big networks. And I had a friend that was an executive at the time, and I did my audition. I thought I did really well. I left, I didn't get the part. And when he called me the next night and he said, well, you know what happened? I said, no. He said, when you walked out of the room, one of the executives said, Middle America will never buy an Italian doctor.
Oh.
This is in my lifetime.
Wow.
This is in like the mid 80s. The mid 80s. They wouldn't hire me because I was Italian to play a doctor.
Oh, wow. Jesus.
So, you know, that, you know, I don't think that's pervasive now. I think we've gotten past that.
Yeah.
But it's still in my mind. So I'd like to play roles that, but I don't just have, I mean, I played Michael McGuire on The Practice for 6 years, playing a detective named Michael McGuire. So I don't just have to play Italian characters, but I'd like to play some that are not specifically mobster.
Yeah, there certainly isn't enough Italian American or even here Italian Canadian representations on screen or film where they're not mob, with the exception of you know, Scorsese's with his parents, Italian American, that documentary, and or De Niro's character in A Bronx Tale, even though that is kind of a gangster movie, but he's just a bus driver, you know. Right. There certainly isn't enough.
No, that's why. I mean, I think like I just mentioned Joe Montana. I mean, he did that on Criminal Minds. He plays the head of the whole Criminal Minds things, and his character is Italian. He's managed to do it quite a bit, fortunately. So they're out. It's much more than they used to be.
Yeah, so. No, for sure. You had mentioned when we were talking on social media that there was a story about when you get the phone call that your father Carmine had a stroke and you're in the pool. You said there was a story about that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So they had been talking that scene. You know, The Sopranos would shoot the whole season before it would air. It's not like other shows where you're doing one after the other. So they could pick up scenes that they had missed. Originally, we were supposed to get that scene in the pool in Miami, and we were never able to get it. So they kept trying to reschedule when we could shoot this scene in the pool. So it was actually the scene we were shot with Frankie Valli when we're in my room, and I say, you know, historically speaking, historical changes have come. It was one of those scenes, and they said, Ray, stick around. We're going to shoot that pool scene afterwards because there's a pool outside the house where we're shooting on Long Island. So it was October. And they said, we'll heat the pool. It's like, okay, but it's 3:00. We're going to shoot now. When is the pool going to get warm enough to get? The pool was freezing. And in the scene, I'm supposed to be swimming, and then the phone rings. And I said, could you get me a float? I wanted a float because when I first came up with the concept for Little Carmine, I always thought he thinks he's Michael Corleone, but he's more Fredo. That was early on. That was early on. And if you notice, when I sit, even in that scene with your brother, Billy, whatever happened there, I assume the Michael Corleone pose.
Head of the table.
I sit at the chair with my legs crossed and my arms on the thing, like he does in so many of those scenes. So I was purposely doing that because I thought, you know, usually you don't want to imitate another actor, but I thought Little Carmine would actually be imitating Michael Corleone in The Godfather. That was my thought.
That's a good take. Yeah, so, I can see that too.
Right. So it's subtle. And then there's also some George Bush gestures I do in addition.
Oh, right. That's why you always had the cowboy.
Right. So I snuck in some this gesture here George Bush used to do in addition. Right. So I do that. Yeah. You'll see that gesture in there. But I wanted to do a little tribute to John Cazale in The Godfather. Part 2.
Great actor.
There's the great scene where he's laying on the chaise lounge and he's saying, I could have been boss. I'm smart. Yeah. And Michael is sitting in the Michael pose, which I'm doing in that other scene. But John is on his back, flailing like a turtle that can't right himself. You know, he's trying to say, I'm smart. And he's just in the most vulnerable position possible, back on a chaise lounge where he can't even sit up because it's such an awkward position. So that's why I said, could you get me a float? So I wanted to be in a very awkward, when I'm on the float in the pool, was kind of an homage to John Cazale laying in the chaise lounge.
Right. Nice, nice.
And the water was freezing.
And the water was freezing on top of it.
And it was completely cloudy and windy. So
really,
I
wow,
had to lay on
me.
I had to lay on the float holding a stick because the float kept getting blown off its mark. So I'd hold the stick, shivering, and then they'd say, okay, the sun's going to break out of this cloud in a couple of minutes, Ray. As soon as the sun hits you, we're going to yell action, and you hear the phone ring. So I'm literally shivering, holding onto the stick, and the cloud would pass, a beam of sunlight would hit me, and they'd say action. Hey, John boy, how's the weather?
Did you only do it the one time?
I don't think we did more than 1 or 2 takes, but it was because it was second unit and it was at the end of the day and we just had to get it. But it was cold.
Oh man!
So,
so that's the story behind
That's the glamour of being And I don't know if you ever watched a Seinfeld episode, but there's something to be said about cold water.
Why is that ringing a bell?
Yeah, somebody's going to come up with it on the chat, I bet.
Yeah.
George goes swimming in the ocean and it's cold.
Oh, yeah, the shrinkage.
My favorite line is Elaine says, "It shrinks?" Another
incredible show. Was that it? Did you ever go up for that? Or?
I wish I had. I would have killed to have been on a Seinfeld episode or Curb Your Enthusiasm. And I know Larry David, and I heard he's a huge Sopranos fan. I wish he would have used me on a Curb. I never even auditioned for it. I was always hoping he'd see The Making of Cleaver because that has the same ad-libbed, improvised feel.
That's right.
The way they shoot Curbs. I was always hoping, I hope he sees this. That was acting I thought. Yeah. Either him or Christopher Guest. I wanted either Larry David or Christopher Guest to see The Making of Cleaver. So when you have them on tomorrow, when you have Larry David,
I'll mention it.
Please
mention it. Yeah, send it to his agent.
Yeah.
Just one last question. Thanks. I really appreciate your spending so much time talking to me today. Just lastly, I was going to ask. You've had this long career as an actor. I mean, what advice do you give actors to stick it out?
Okay, that's a good question. What I tell actors is to find something outside of acting that gives you some joy, that you could do on your own, that doesn't need somebody else's permission to do. Otherwise, you become bitter and angry and you feel very unfulfilled, because if you're putting all your happiness in the entertainment basket, the business basket, there's just so much time where you're down. There's so much time where you're getting rejected. You've got to find something that's within your control that brings you some joy. Whatever, it could be anything. It could be a sport. It could be a musical instrument. I've turned on different things over the years. It evolves. I would kayak for a while. Now I've found this passion for horses. And it's just like, I don't need some producer to say, yes, Ray, you're allowed to do this, because that's what acting is. You need somebody else's permission to do it. It's not the same for other artists. If you're a musician, you have an idea for a song, you could get up in the middle of the night and do it. I mean, if you're an actor, what am I going to do? Get up and do a monologue? It's not going to happen. So you need something that fulfills you outside of this business. Plus, it's always going to inform your acting too. Anything that you do in life is going to inform your acting at some point.
True.
So find things outside the business that you're in control of that could bring you some joy on a daily basis.
Perfect. I like that. Very, very good.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, Ray, thanks again so much. I really appreciate you coming out and talking about your life and career, and hopefully we'll have you back with Dustin and Larry David.
Larry David and Christopher Guest. You might as well have the Coen brothers show up
all
too.
At the same time.
Bring the Coen brothers.
Perfect.
All right, man. What a pleasure.
Thank you so much, and we'll keep in touch. And those of you who were commenting and asking questions, thank you so much. And for anyone else, if you're haven't yet subscribed to our channel, right next to the description box, you'll see the subscribe button. Click on that and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time we go live, or like we are today, or release a new video. Okay. Well, Ray, thanks again.
My pleasure,
man. And we'll take care.
All right. See you soon. Later.
See you